I'm pregnant, Sarah blurted out, her voice trembling as she stood frozen in the doorway of Jack's office. The birthday cake in her hands suddenly felt impossibly heavy as her boss, the man who had jokingly proposed to her just 3 hours earlier, stared back at her with widening eyes. This wasn't how she'd planned to tell him. This wasn't how she'd planned anything in her life. But now, with those 2 words hanging in the air between them, everything was about to change forever. Jack gripped the edge of his desk, his knuckles turning white. The single father of a 10-year-old daughter was now facing the prospect of another child, with his marketing director, no less. The company's strict non-fraternization policy flashed through his mind. They could both lose their jobs. Worse, he could lose the custody arrangement he'd fought so hard to maintain for Emma. "How long have you known?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Sarah set down the cake, her long silky hair falling forward to hide her face. 3 weeks. But that's not all. She looked up, tears glistening in her eyes. "The board meeting this morning, they're selling the company. We'll all be evaluated for redundancy next month." The secret she'd been carrying as the only executive privy to the information was finally out. Their jobs, their futures, and now this unexpected pregnancy, everything hung in the balance. If you're feeling the tension build, give this video a like to see how Jack responds to this life-changing revelation. The irony wasn't lost on Jack. Just that morning, as Sarah had walked into the office carrying birthday cupcakes for herself, a lonely tradition he'd noticed in the 3 years she'd worked for him, he'd impulsively joked, "Marry me, Sarah. A woman who brings her own birthday cake deserves a lifetime of someone else baking for her." He'd meant it as a light-hearted compliment, never expecting her soft response, "What if I say yes?" "We need to talk about this," Jack said, running a hand through his hair as he circled his desk. "Not here. Not with the walls having ears." The company they'd both poured their hearts into for years was now the enemy, watching their every move. "Meet me at Riverside Park at 7. The bench by the old oak tree." Sarah nodded, her professional demeanor returning like armor. As she turned to leave, Jack called after her, "And Sarah? Happy birthday." The bittersweet smile she gave him made his heart constrict in his chest. The afternoon crawled by in a haze of meaningless meetings and unanswered emails. Jack couldn't focus on anything except the bombshell Sarah had dropped. A baby. His baby. The thought terrified and thrilled him in equal measure. Emma had been asking for a sibling for years, but after his ex-wife's betrayal, he'd sworn off serious relationships. Yet something about Sarah had always drawn him in, her intelligence, her determination, the way she commanded a room without raising her voice. At precisely 7 o'clock, Jack spotted Sarah sitting on the bench, the setting sun casting a golden glow on her fair skin. She looked ethereal and utterly vulnerable. As he approached, the weight of their situation pressed down on him. "I meant what I said this morning," he said without preamble, sitting beside her. "Even before I knew about the baby." Sarah's head snapped up. "What are you saying, Jack?" "I'm saying that joke wasn't entirely a joke. I've been falling for you for 3 years, Sarah. I just never had the courage to cross that line." He reached for her hand, surprised when she pulled away. "You don't understand," she whispered. "There's something else you need to know about me, something I've never told anyone at work." Her voice broke. "The reason I always bring my own birthday cake is because the last time someone threw me a party, it was my parents. They died that night, driving home in a storm." The secret pain she'd carried for years finally spilled out. "I've been terrified of letting anyone close ever since." Jack felt his heart breaking for her. "Sarah, No, let me finish," she interrupted. "When you joked about marrying me today, it was the first time in 7 years that I've felt something other than dread on my birthday. And then the board meeting happened, and the pregnancy test I took last night was confirmed by my doctor this morning, and suddenly everything is falling apart and coming together at the same time." She finally looked at him, vulnerability raw in her eyes. "I'm scared, Jack." The park had grown darker around them, the first stars appearing overhead. Jack took a chance and reached for her hand again. This time, she let him take it. "I'm scared too," he admitted. "But maybe we're stronger together than apart." If you're rooting for Jack and Sarah to find their way through this complicated situation, hit that subscribe button to follow their journey. What neither of them noticed was the figure watching from behind a nearby tree, Claire Donovan, the company's ambitious VP who had been gunning for Jack's position for years. She smiled coldly as she snapped a photo of their clasped hands with her phone. This was exactly the ammunition she needed. The next morning, Sarah arrived at work to find her access card denied. Confused, she was directed to HR, where a sympathetic but firm representative informed her that she was being placed on administrative leave pending an investigation into an alleged inappropriate relationship with her direct supervisor. "This is ridiculous," Sarah protested. "Who made these allegations?" "I'm afraid I can't disclose that information," the HR rep replied. "But the board takes these matters very seriously, especially given your condition." Sarah felt the blood drain from her face. "My condition?" "Your pregnancy, Ms. Reynolds. The board has been informed." Panic clawed at Sarah's throat as she left the building. How had they found out? She'd told no one except Jack. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number: "Meet me at Café Lux in 20 minutes if you want to save your career." See. When Sarah arrived at the cafe, Claire was already waiting, a predatory smile on her face. "Quite a predicament you found yourself in," she said, stirring her latte. "Pregnant by your boss, company about to be sold, career in shambles. What do you want, Claire?" Sarah asked, her voice steady despite the turmoil inside. "The acquisition deal isn't finalized yet," Claire replied. "There's a competing offer on the table, one that would keep the company intact but with new leadership." "My leadership?" She leaned forward. "I need Jack out of the way, and you're my ticket to making that happen." Sarah felt sick. "You want me to betray Jack?" "I want you to think about your future, and your child's future," Claire countered. "Help me, and I'll make sure you keep your job. Refuse, and, well." She shrugged elegantly. Single motherhood is so challenging these days. The ultimatum hung in the air between them. Sarah had 24 hours to decide. Comment below with what you think Sarah should do: stand by Jack or protect her career? Meanwhile, Jack was facing his own interrogation in the boardroom. "This is a witch hunt," he argued, facing the stern faces of the board members. "My personal life has never affected my work performance." "It's not just about performance, Jack," the chairman replied. "It's about judgment. Dating your marketing director? Getting her pregnant? These aren't the actions of a CEO we want representing us during an acquisition." Jack felt a cold dread settling in his stomach. "Who told you she was pregnant?" The chairman exchanged glances with the others. "Claire Donovan brought some concerns to our attention. She's been quite helpful during this transition period." Everything suddenly clicked into place. Claire had always been ruthlessly ambitious, but this was a new low. As Jack left the meeting, his phone buzzed with a text from Sarah: "We need to talk." "Not at the park. My place. 8 p.m. When Jack arrived at Sarah's apartment that evening, he was surprised to find it packed with boxes. "You're moving?" he asked, confusion evident in his voice. "Claire offered me a deal," Sarah explained, her expression unreadable. "She wants you out so she can take over as CEO before the acquisition. She promised to protect my job if I help her." Jack felt as though he'd been punched. "And are you going to take it?" Sarah's eyes flashed. "Do you really think so little of me?" She moved to her laptop and turned the screen toward him. "I've been recording every conversation with Claire since this morning. Including one where she admitted to hacking into my medical portal to get information about my pregnancy. Relief flooded through Jack, followed quickly by admiration. "You're incredible, you know that?" "I'm also terrified," Sarah admitted. "But I won't let her destroy what we've built, the company or—" She hesitated, her hand drifting to her stomach. "Anything else?" Jack stepped closer, his heart pounding. "About that joke proposal." "Jack, you don't have to." "I want to," he interrupted. "Not because of the baby, or the company, or any of this chaos. But because when I'm with you, Sarah, even the worst days feel manageable. I've been falling in love with you for 3 years, watching you bring yourself birthday cake and wishing I could be the one to bake it for you instead." Tears filled Sarah's eyes as Jack continued, "I'm not actually proposing right now, that would be insane given everything we're dealing with. But I am asking for a chance. A chance to see if what I feel for you is something we can build a life on." Sarah's smile was like the sun breaking through clouds. "I think I'd like that," she whispered, stepping into his arms. If this emotional moment touched your heart, please hit that like button and share this video with someone who believes in second chances. The next morning, armed with Sarah's recordings, they walked into the emergency board meeting together. The evidence was damning. Claire had not only violated privacy laws but had attempted to manipulate company politics for personal gain during a sensitive acquisition period. "This is preposterous," Claire sputtered as the recording played. "She clearly doctored this. The timestamps and metadata say otherwise," the company's legal counsel interjected. "Ms. Donovan, I suggest you leave the premises immediately. We'll be in touch regarding potential legal action." As Claire was escorted out, the chairman turned to Jack and Sarah. "While this clears up the issue of corporate espionage, it doesn't address the matter of your relationship." Jack took a deep breath. "With all due respect, sir, my personal life is my own. But in the interest of transparency, yes, Sarah and I are exploring a relationship. Yes, we're expecting a child together. And no, it won't affect our ability to lead this company through the acquisition or beyond." Sarah stepped forward. "And if the board feels it necessary, I'm prepared to transfer to another department to avoid any conflict of interest. But I won't apologize for finding happiness, especially not when it's with someone as exceptional as Jack." The boardroom fell silent. Finally, the chairman spoke. "The competing offer Claire mentioned actually does exist. It's from Meridian Group, and they specifically requested that both of you stay on in your current roles. They were impressed with how you've grown the company." He smiled slightly. "Perhaps we've been too hasty in our judgment." 3 months later, Jack stood nervously outside Emma's bedroom door, listening to the animated conversation inside. He'd finally told his daughter about Sarah's pregnancy last week, but tonight was different. Tonight, Sarah was moving in, and he'd asked Emma to help her unpack her things in what would become their shared home. "Did you really bring your own birthday cake to work?" Emma's voice drifted through the door, filled with the innocent curiosity only a 10-year-old could muster. Jack held his breath, waiting for Sarah's response. They hadn't discussed how much of her painful past to share with Emma. "I did," Sarah replied softly. "For a long time, birthdays were hard for me because I missed my parents. But then your dad said something that changed everything." "The marry me joke?" Emma giggled. "Dad told me about that. He said he was being silly but also kind of not." "Exactly," Sarah's voice warmed. "Sometimes the things we say as jokes are actually the things we want most in the world." There was a pause, and Jack leaned closer to the door. "I'm glad you're having a baby," Emma said suddenly. "But I'm more glad you're living with us now. Dad smiles a lot more since you started coming over." Jack felt his heart swell as Sarah replied, "I smile more too, Emma. You and your dad make me very happy." He knocked gently before entering, finding them surrounded by unpacked boxes, a half-assembled bookshelf between them. "Everything okay in here?" Emma jumped up and threw her arms around him. Dad! Sarah was just telling me about how you proposed as a joke, but it wasn't really a joke. That's so romantic. Jack's eyes met Sarah's over Emma's head, and the love he saw there took his breath away. Sometimes, he said, not breaking their gaze, the best things in life start with a joke. If you've ever had a moment where something said in jest turned into something beautiful, leave a comment below sharing your story. 2 weeks before the baby was due, disaster struck. Jack received a frantic call from Sarah while in a meeting with the Meridian Group executives. Jack, her voice was tight with pain, something's wrong. I'm bleeding. The hospital says to come right away. The world seemed to stop. Jack dropped everything, racing to the hospital with his heart in his throat. By the time he arrived, Sarah was already being prepped for emergency surgery. The placenta had detached, a rare but dangerous complication that threatened both her life and their unborn daughters. You can't come in, sir, a nurse blocked his path as they wheeled Sarah toward the operating room. Please, Sarah reached out her hand, tears streaming down her face. Jack, I'm scared. He pushed past the nurse, taking her hand and walking alongside the gurney. I'm here. I'm not going anywhere. Sir, you really can't, the nurse began again. That's my fiancé and my child, Jack said with such fierce determination that the medical staff exchanged glances and relented. You can stay until we reach the hors d'oeuvres, but then you have to wait outside, the doctor conceded. As they reached the imposing double doors, Jack leaned down and pressed his forehead to Sarah's. You are the strongest person I know, he whispered. You're going to get through this. Both of you. Sarah's grip on his hand tightened. If something happens to me. Nothing is going to happen, he interrupted. But if it does, she insisted, promise me you'll tell our daughter about her birthday cake tradition. Tell her it started sad but ended with the greatest happiness I've ever known. Jack felt tears burning his eyes as he nodded. I promise. But you're going to tell her yourself, Sarah. You have to. The medical team gently separated them, wheeling Sarah through the doors that swung shut with a terrible finality. Jack collapsed into a waiting room chair, his head in his hands. Hours passed like years. Emma arrived with Jack's mother, her small face pinched with worry. Is Sarah going to be okay, Dad? Is the baby? Jack pulled his daughter close, wishing he could promise her everything would be fine. The doctors are doing everything they can, was all he could manage. Just as dawn was breaking, the surgeon emerged, exhaustion evident in every line of his face. Jack stood on shaky legs, Emma's hand clutched tightly in his. Mr. Reynolds? The doctor asked. It's Harrison, Jack corrected automatically. Sarah is Reynolds. I'm Harrison. The doctor's expression softened slightly. Well, Mr. Harrison, you have a healthy baby girl. 5 pounds, 3 ounces. Small, but fighting. Relief flooded through Jack, but it was short-lived. And Sarah? The doctor's hesitation made Jack's blood run cold. We had to perform an emergency hysterectomy to stop the bleeding. She lost a lot of blood, but she's stabilized now. The next 24 hours will be critical, but I'm cautiously optimistic. Jack felt his knees buckle. Emma's small arms wrapped around his waist, holding him up with surprising strength. When can we see them? She asked. Your sister is in the NICU. You can see her through the window. Ms. Reynolds will be in recovery for a few more hours, but you can sit with her once she's moved to ICU. The tiny bundle in the incubator looked impossibly fragile, connected to monitors and tubes that seemed too large for her delicate body. Emma pressed her hand against the glass, tears streaming down her face. She's so small, Dad. But she's strong, Jack replied, his voice thick with emotion. Just like her mother. When they were finally allowed to see Sarah, Jack was shocked by how pale she looked against the white hospital sheets. Her long hair was tangled around her face, and the machines monitoring her vital signs beeped steadily in the background. Emma approached the bed cautiously. "Can she hear us?" "I think so," Jack said, taking Sarah's limp hand in his. "Sarah? We're here. Emma and I. And our daughter is beautiful." To their surprise, Sarah's eyelids fluttered open. "Jack?" Her voice was barely audible. To their surprise, Sarah's eyelids fluttered open. "Jack?" Her voice was barely audible. "I'm here," he whispered, squeezing her hand gently. "We're all here." "The baby?" Fear clouded her eyes. "She's perfect," Jack assured her. "Small but fighting. Just like her mom." A weak smile touched Sarah's lips. "I want to see her." "As soon as you're stronger," Jack promised. "The doctors say you need to rest." Emma stepped closer, her small hand reaching out to touch Sarah's arm. "I saw her already. She has your nose and Dad's chin." Tears slipped down Sarah's cheeks. "Thank you for being here, Emma." "That's what families do," Emma said with the simple wisdom of childhood. "We stick together." If this emotional family moment touched your heart, please hit that like button and share with someone who understands the power of love during life's most challenging moments. 6 months later, Sarah stood in Jack's kitchen, watching as he and Emma carefully decorated a birthday cake. Her birthday cake. The first one she hadn't made herself in 7 years. "Do you think Mom will like it?" Emma asked, concentrating on piping a wobbly blue flower. "She'll love it because you made it," Jack assured his daughter, his eyes meeting Sarah's across the room. The word "Mom" still brought tears to Sarah's eyes. Emma had started using it 3 months ago, around the same time they'd moved in together. Sarah's hand rested on her growing belly as she watched the two people who had become her family. The company was thriving under the new ownership, with both her and Jack receiving promotions rather than pink slips. Claire had moved to a competitor across the country, her reputation in tatters. "You know," Jack said casually as Emma ran off to get the candles, "that joke proposal on your last birthday. What about it?" Sarah asked, her heart suddenly racing. Jack pulled a small velvet box from his pocket. "I was thinking maybe this time it shouldn't be a joke." As he dropped to one knee, Sarah felt tears of joy streaming down her face. Sometimes the most unexpected moments, a joking proposal, a pregnancy announcement, even a corporate takeover attempt, could lead to the greatest happiness of all. "Yes," she whispered before he could even ask the question. 1,000 times yes. If this story touched your heart, please like and subscribe for more emotional journeys that remind us all that love can bloom in the most unexpected places. Share with someone who needs to be reminded that sometimes, the jokes we make can become the dreams we live. Red Heart.